What up, true believers? Mason here with Comics and Crosses, where we explore the eternal truths behind our modern mythology. And today I got a video I'm pretty excited about. I'm going to talk about why you should be reading Bliss from Image Comics. Alright guys, first of all, full disclosure, I love this title and that's why I'm talking about it. Bliss is a ongoing series right now. It's probably a mini-series. I don't actually know, but it's written by Sean Lewis with art by Caitlin Yarsky. She's the only one credited for art, so I'm assuming that means that she's doing the pencils and color and everything, or however she's creating it. This series is only on issue 3, which means it's still very possible to catch up, to jump in, or it is Image, so you could always wait for the trade, but I'm enjoying every month when another issue of this comes out. I think it's a really beautiful story. It's crafted very well, and let me give you kind of a synopsis as I would put it. Basically, Bliss is a story of a father in desperate circumstances. He's got a son who's in the hospital, and the hospital bills are racking up to the point where he's not going to be able to keep him there. So in a desperate move, this father, known as Benton, he goes to a seedy part of town where he's hoping to find some sort of maybe dishonest work, but anything that will pay enough to help him do what he needs to do for his family. He ends up getting involved with some very seedy characters, these strange alien-looking demigods of the slums of Feral City where he lives. At first we don't know what he's doing, but we know that he's finding a way to pay for his son's hospital bills. Ultimately, as we progress in the series, and only being on issue 3 so far, we find out that this takes Benton to a very dark place, a very low place. Another thing that we're aware of because of the way this story is structured is that this all ends pretty bad, because it actually begins with Perry, I believe, Benton's son, testifying in front of some sort of parliament in regards to the deeds of his father and what has happened. So we know that something has happened, and it seems that that there's a lot of enemies or a lot of crimes that have been racked up. Another major point of this story, the title Bliss actually comes from the drug that is sold in this poor part of town and used by a lot of people in the slums. And basically it's a drug that you drink and are able to cry out your bad memories and forget about them. Pretty powerful imagery. Pretty interesting, high concept kind of idea, and I think it's pretty neat the further this story goes along to see what that exactly means for our characters and the world that they live in. So my big picture take on this title, first off, is that I love the writing. Whenever I pick one of these up, I cannot put it down. The story flows. Sean Lewis has a great script. The imagery by Caitlin Yarsky is beautiful. The colors, I think, really bring out a sort of beauty and a poetic nature, a lot of glowing. I think the coloring that she does gives a very kind of glowing, alive sense, very aware of shadows and lighting. And the imagery is done in such a way that, unlike a lot of stories that are very dark, where you get art that is very rough and gritty to make you kind of feel that, instead the sickness and the pain of the story, I feel like, is communicated in a different way that still works. I think the sort of rough, sketchy, kind of even sometimes hard to decipher imagery that you get in some comic art is one way that we've maybe seen a lot of in painful stories and dark stories. But Caitlin Yarsky goes kind of a different direction here that I think still communicates, and I think the best way it communicates is with the expression, the faces of the characters going through this story. The diversity of expressions and appearances of characters is very profound, and I think really carries the story along and allows the reader and viewer, as you're going through the comic, to be able to be able to be there for each emotional milestone and beat. You really are able to track quite well, I feel like. I would also just mention that this story feels very much in the vein of like a Black Mirror, like a picture of a high concept picture of what it is that we deal with in real life in a very fantastical setting, or not even a so fantastical setting, but just obviously unique circumstances that are a little more creative, a little more heightened reality, I guess you could say. And so I find that a lot of fun, and I think it really gives Sean Lewis a way of talking about some serious subjects, and I want to get into them right now. So first concept that I really pull out of this story that I think is explored very well, and obviously the series is ongoing, but I like the concept of what does it profit a man to gain the world and yet lose his soul? So Benton, the father figure, is in a unique position here where he knows he's doing something wrong. He's going against his own morals, but he's trying to do it for the right reasons, I guess you could say. So a concept that kind of ties in with that also is there's a way that seems right to a man in his heart, but in the end leads to destruction. That's also a concept from Holy Scripture, from the Bible. And because also the Bible mentions that the heart is deceitful above all things. So here we see somebody trying to follow their heart and do what they think is right, but we see it kind of destroy them. The more common colloquial term, that we're used to is like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So that's just kind of a concept that we hear, in culture and society. And that's certainly what kind of happens here. And we watch that descent, and it's very, very painful, very hard to see, but very beautiful in the way it's painted. When it comes to addiction, and I think that this title tackles the ugliness of addiction pretty well, in that we see as the father goes on, he kind of descends further due to this drug Bliss. And I don't want to give too much away, but it does tackle that subject. And this is something that we see in biblical scripture as well. This idea that I have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial for me, and I will not be mastered by anything. I wouldn't say that we see a whole lot in the way of addiction in Holy Scripture, but there is a sense of not being mastered by anything, and it does touch on drunkenness and kind of the uselessness of drunkenness, of getting into a drunken stupor and, say somebody hit me and I didn't even feel it, and ultimately, you wake up and there's nothingness to that. So, but this here we see with some of what Benton's going through, just how the pull of being able to escape your pain ultimately just leads him down a darker, deeper place where there's even more pain. So I personally really enjoy how it's being explored, how it's being represented, how we get this cool kind of scenario and platform to really explore this. Beyond this, the world that's being created, and I think some of the concepts that are being touched on just a little bit, as in the city's relationship with these demigods, and then there's some greater villain that we have not yet fully seen or hasn't really been revealed to us, but there's some kind of confrontation coming. I think there's a lot of promise there, and I'm curious to see where Lewis goes with it. So yeah, ultimately I'm a big fan. I hope that if you haven't already, that my video in some way piqued your curiosity enough to just go check it out, to pick up Bliss, get issues 1, 2, 3, jump on board and see if you like it. I hope that you do, and thanks for sticking around. Please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'm putting out videos every week, and I'm just having a blast here, and thank you for sharing this time with me.